good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love. Our love. I got something here for you and me. Oh yeah, it's the medical marijuana. Whoa, whoa. I got something here for you and me. Oh yeah, it's the medical marijuana. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This week we talked to Alex Gomez from Aloft magazine, and we're going to talk all about the Cannabis Lifestyle. But first, let me just remind you that every Friday and Saturday nights on Clubhouse, I do Late Night with Larajuana. Check us out at 9 p.m. West Coast and midnight on the East Coast. And now, here is Alex Gomez.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Love.
Welcome today, CEO, publisher of Aloft magazine, lifestyle marketing of cannabis, and keeping MMJ alive in the adult cannabis world. Welcome, Alex Gomez. Thank you.
How you doing, Alice? Great to be here with you.
Doing great. You can call me Larry. So first tell me about Aloft, and then we'll get into all your other projects.
I had been in the publishing industry before. I spent my career in the advertising industry and then moved into publishing the last year or so that I lived in Los Angeles. And when we moved out to Palm Springs, California, the cannabis industry was still going through the process of becoming legal. That was in 2007. And so from an adult use standpoint. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to study this business and see what's happening in the community and see what's happening in the industry. And I thought, you know what, different brands that I worked for, we focused so much on the benefits of products and services, you know, whether it was Nike or Pepsi or banking or whoever it was. And it really dawned on me, the light went off in my head that maybe what we need to do here is do something that is a bit Vanity Fair or GQ or Esquire, mix it in with a little bit of Good Housekeeping and have some Mad Magazine thrown in it as well.
Okay.
And that's how Aloft Magazine was born. Started it in 2019 after doing about 3 or 4 years of research in the space of content and magazines that were imparting information about cannabis. And it was great to read, you know, High Time. I've been reading High Time since 1977. And so when I looked at what was missing, in my view, what was missing was lifestyle stories about cannabis and how people benefit from that so that we could celebrate those benefits that people receive from their consumption.
So is Aloft magazine a print magazine or electronic magazine? And tell me more about what's in it.
It's a website, aloftmagazine.com. Initially, we were going to go do print and have the website be secondary so that we could drive subscriptions. But we flipped the model when I looked at the cost of printing.
Yes.
On one end. But the other end, too, is that there aren't very many experienced media reps in the space that are experienced as media people and then have the experience with cannabis. You either got one or the other.
Right.
You got successful stoners that don't know how to sell media, or you have media people that don't know what it is to be stoned and selling a product.
So it would be hard for them to sell a lifestyle that they don't know about.
Of course.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Of course. And so, you know, I thought, okay, rather than making the investment to go print 25,000 copies of this magazine, why not just flip it on its ear and make it an online piece, offer it for free, and you know, as part of our business plan is to be able to have an insiders club at some point that people can actually go on travel and tourism, things that we can bring groups of people together to enjoy their use of plant medicine.
So, are you doing some education in this as well? As part of the lifestyle, are new people coming in, and
Yeah.
of course they may not know a lot about it. So, do you head them into certain directions about what the lifestyle really means?
Absolutely. So we have various sections in the magazine. When you look at the website, you'll see that we have culture, we have 420 spirituality, we have medicinals, we have entertainment, we have arts, we got lifestyle. So a lot of the content that's there now that was published prior to 2020 focused on, some of the best stoner movies that you could watch, focused on some of the spiritual adventures that people have, meditating with cannabis, being able to become centered with it and using the plant to elevate their mindset and elevate their spirit overall.
So, was your impetus to go into the cannabis industry your actual love for the plant and its uses, and your own your own personal connection, or was
Absolutely.
there was like some people have incidents with family members that needed it medicinally and stuff that gets them into the industry. So in figuring out how you wanted to model your magazine, did you have any big surprises? Have you done publications before? And because it's like you said, you were surprised about the printing costs. Okay, I printed a newsletter, 12-page newsletter, which is nowhere near what you're doing, I'm sure,
Right.
for like 20 something years. And of course, the printing costs just eat. Everybody made money in that
Yep.
business, but me.
Right.
Okay, the distributors, the printer, but I was making a quarter a piece. It was
Right.
so. I think your pivot to go electronic, it was absolutely the way to go, to do it on the internet. I mean, I
Yeah.
eventually did that myself. So how is it? Are you the chief cook and bottle washer? Do you have to go out and get these ads yourself, or do you
Currently,
have a crew?
yes. No. I had a crew. I had a staff of started with a staff of about 5 people. I had a managing editor. I had some contributors, and I had a sales rep that was an experienced magazine representative. My background in print is that I transformed a newspaper company from being strictly print to relying on their digital space, because digital, essentially, you can add pages to it and it doesn't cost you more than having the guy in your web room add
Right.
the page, right? So from a real estate standpoint, it was really inexpensive. The beauty of it was that we had said, well, why not have the digital space be sponsored or sections be sponsored and use the newspaper or our magazines to drive traffic? So we created these great promotions when we launched, for example, the Ford Escape vehicle. We had a promotion like, where would you escape in your new Ford Escape? To put in perspective, the previous year, Ford had given the company $250,000 for their program, for their annual advertising program in support of their dealers in the local markets where we're at. This time around, they gave us $500,000. So we doubled the budget, and the amount of pages stayed the same as far as what went into the newspaper. And then we added these promotions in place where you could win a trip and the use of a vehicle for 4 days on your trip. And we partnered with different travel organizations in the different markets where our papers were at. That helped drive our sales of the newspaper. Our circulation went up by 15% overall. In New York, we were up by 10. In LA, we were up by 7 or 8. In San Francisco, we were up by about 17, and in Chicago, we were up about 18. So overall, we generated a 15% increase. And that was when LA Times was losing, and they were bleeding 10 to 15% circulation a month.
Mm.
And so we were able to sustain that by taking the same sort of framework of a promotion like this and give it to other clients that gave us money.
Well,
Yeah.
what a great coup for you to land that deal with Ford, man. That's just wonderful. So
Yeah, and so seeing how I was able to do that and looking at the cost of trying to generate advertising dollars when nobody knew your publication, in this case, if Aloft magazine was going to go into print, I had to figure out where we were going to place them besides dispensaries because it was going to be a free magazine, and then go out and get advertisers that could support the editorial content as well as the printing of the publication. And at the end of the day, we had to generate somewhere around $30,000 or $40,000 in ad revenue, and it wasn't going to happen because we didn't have the metrics to prove that we had 25,000 plus people reading the magazine. So we said, you know what? It's a tough nut to crack as a print publication. Let's go online.
absolutely good,
Yeah.
absolutely good move. So how many so how often do you publish?
So right now, our publishing model went out of whack during 2020. We published a few stories in 2020. We've got about 4 stories in the can that I have to complete in the next. 2 of them I have to complete literally this week. They're kind of half-baked, no pun intended. So we are looking at publishing pretty much on a weekly basis with 1 to 3 new stories. And, being on Clubhouse, which is my new love now.
Me as well.
I get to listen to a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different experiences that people have. And so there's great information, and I have a coffee can full of Post-it notes with story ideas, and there's probably about 80 or 90 story ideas that include athletics, that include things like lifestyle things like hiking or art, going to art galleries, going to immersive experiences that people can experience while they're elevated.
So what kind of businesses do you have right now getting space and taking advantage of your wonderful website and your publication? And who would you be looking for? Who do you think is, because there might be some people out here with products or whatever, and
Right.
And want to find out some information about how they can get involved with putting ads in.
Right. So we have a couple of artists that do strain art. They've been doing classic looking posters for a number of years of, Blue Dream or Afghan Kush or Gorilla Glue. So they've done these posters and artwork over the years, and they advertise with us, as well as companies that sell uptake devices. So we had a company that came up with this cutting edge vapor that actually measures the amount of milligrams that you are vaping so that you can manage your consumption if you're vaping for medical use or for recreational use, because you don't want to overconsume, right?
So this is actually a vapor pen or a dab pen or something
It looks like a miniature cell phone with a little antenna. And it's got haptics on there. So haptic is like when your phone vibrates when you press keys or buttons.
Right.
So it has that to let you know that you've reached your 3 milligrams if that's what you were looking to achieve. And then it's connected to an app, and it gives you what your consumption is, because via Bluetooth it connects to your phone where you have your app, and it'll tell you, okay, this week or today you consumed over 10 milligrams. Or 50 milligrams, however it is that you medicate.
So it'll either do like the session when you're actively using it, or take a total day analysis.
Like a total day or even a total month analysis. And the last I spoke to them in January, they were having issues with parts coming from Asia.
Everybody is. Yeah.
Part of the programming that they were working on was for it to even record the cultivar or strain of oil that you were smoking.
So do you have to punch in, let's say I go to the dispensary and I buy Blue Dream, and it says that it's 18.5% THC.
Yes.
Do we have to punch in that percentage so that it knows how much THC is in that product?
Not necessarily, because there's a whole bunch of different scientific sources that will give that to you. The machine actually measures the amount of THC that is in the cartridge that you are going to be consuming. So it'll already tell you what your percentage is.
So it doesn't really matter what it tests out at. What's inhaling is measured through what's coming through their device.
Every toke gets a measure.
Yeah, I got a term.
It's really interesting. It's a really interesting tool. And I thought, you know what? I've seen the ones from Dosist. I've seen the ones that, the traditional vape pens that will light up, heat up, and then depending on whether you have it on cold, medium, or hot, and then once you finish doing your intake, it just has a standard measure of how much you're actually vaping. A lot of people, the first time that they vape, they'll hack out a lung because they just sucked it like it was a straw. And you don't want to suck it like it's a straw. You actually want to suck it like it was a cigarette.
Right. Or a milkshake.
Or a milkshake. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, so what's the name of that device, by the way? I need to go look at that and check it out.
It is called Mode, M-O-D-E.
Nice.
And I think their website is mode.co.
And have you been able to try one of those yourself?
They gave me a prototype that I had for about 2 weeks to play with it and then be able to write a story about it.
Oh, very cool. So
I actually gave it to a nurse who is a cannabis nurse so that she could give me her piece, her thought about how it worked and compared to what she uses, because she uses the Dosist one and then the whatever the standard universal vape pen that you can put a cartridge on.
Right, the 510 connection.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. So that became a standard. So tell me who else is in the magazine. Let's plug them.
So we have had flower brands like High Life Farms. High Life Farms is out of Michigan, but they also have a facility here in California. And that was one of our first ones that actually listened to us, where we said, what you have to do is do lifestyle marketing, as opposed to, because many of the laws in legal states state that manufacturers or cultivators cannot promote consumption when they advertise their product. So it's kind of like alcohol. They don't really promote consumption of alcohol. They promote what the brand represents from a lifestyle standpoint. And so that ends up being one of the tenets, I think, that the industry has to begin to look at, how to mimic what the alcohol industry has done, so that you are this far away from regulations that they could fine you, and you can push the envelope on lifestyle. As an example, Claiborne Co., which is here in Southern California. Claiborne is another brand of flower that advertised with us for a while. And what they did is their ad campaign was the freedom to consume. And they showed a guy that was, parked on his motorcycle overseeing the waves at the beach where he parked his bike at. That is a lifestyle image that, you've been riding your bike on the coast highway and you decided to stop at the beach down in Laguna, and you're enjoying the sea breeze and the waves and whatnot. And didn't show the guy smoking, but we still showed the brand in the air.
Right. And he had a smile on his face, hopefully.
Of course. But one thing that we did put as a rule for any brand that wants to advertise is that they do have to have a legal line similar to what you see on packs of cigarettes or what you might see on bottles of wine or spirits, where the industry, the Federal Trade Commission went after these industries and said, you know what, studies have shown that overconsumption can impair you from driving. So we said, you have to put on there, for adult use only, 21 plus, consume responsibly. So in other words, we said, act like you're already federally legal and put that on there so that people will know that you are a responsible brand. And what you're promoting is the lifestyle benefits that you get from our particular brand of flower, oil, whatever the case may be.
I love it. I think that's a great line, and to mimic
Yeah.
what's already been legal. The only thing I would add to that little blurb on there is that, however, this won't kill you.
That one's going to be a stretch because, I mean, in some states, and I'm not sure if this also came from the FDA, where they said smoking cannabis can lead to cancer.
I'd like to see them prove that.
Right. And it's not the cannabis flower per se. I mean, if you smoke anything that you can smoke can
Right.
do damage to a certain extent.
I know where
I
you're
think
going.
The health benefits have outweighed it, but if you use paper, obviously, the what's in the paper, you are inhaling that. Try inhaling, if you're walking through a forest and there's a fire and there's a ton of smoke,
Right.
see where that gets you because of all the particles of benzenes and God knows what else
Right.
is in the smoke.
And of course,
Yeah.
there could be something that the grower, used that didn't tell us about that could be a problem as well. So I do understand that. That makes a lot of
That's
sense.
one of the issues and concerns in the illicit market, not the craft grower market, because the craft growers really know how to take care of their plants and make sure that their plants are producing the benefits without having to adulterate it with, pesticides and chemicals to get more
Right.
out of your plant. Things that are approved out there and that many growers are using tend to kind of go toward the organic side of it. And so hopefully on the legal side, they have checks and balances in place so
Yeah.
that
Well,
it's not going to cause.
I wish that the craft growers had a higher percentage of people doing it as opposed to the money growers that just want to, grow it, dry it, get it into the dispensaries ASAP.
Right.
There's that attitude out there as well. So I totally support craft cannabis, and I love, I hear a lot of those guys on Clubhouse talking
Right.
about their passion, and it's just wonderful to hear. So as part of the lifestyle, I'm assuming that people, and I've read about it, are having like cannabis weddings. And I
Yes.
know that you're involved with some of that, and you go to a lot of events and so forth. So tell me about the different kinds of cannications and weddings and so forth.
I love that. Can occasions.
Well, I actually used to own cannication.com, which
Uh-huh.
would be good for vacation and education,
There you go.
and I sold it a few years ago. So I made up that word, yes.
Very cool. That makes you rich. I think it was Will Rogers that said, or maybe it was not Will Rogers, but they said that poor is the man who didn't have more than one way of pronouncing a particular or spelling a word or making up words for that matter.
I'm the king of making up words. So
There
all
you
right.
go.
So tell me about tell me about weddings and
Yeah.
other kinds of events.
So one thing that's been a trend and that I've been following now, and it's been going on for about 8 years, is people ditching the alcohol for cannabis at their weddings. And as people have become trained as bud tenders in many places, whether it's Colorado, Washington, California, or any other state where the market is maturing, they have been able to curate weddings that are cannabis focused. I actually went to the Cannabis Wedding Expo last month in Las Vegas. They have another one coming up in Boston, and they have another one coming up in Denver in the next couple of months. So really, really cool and interesting dynamic that you could actually have a bud tender as opposed to a bartender. You can have THC infused beverages, and at the bud bar, you can either have a dab rig, a bong, pre-rolls, or just flower to smoke in a pipe for people and offer them up and provide education for the kind of curious guests who came to the wedding.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah. Or just offer them soft drinks if they are not going to be consuming cannabis directly. They also have bakers who will make your wedding cake and have it be THC infused. They will make 2 cakes. They'll have one that has it and one that does not have it. But they've been able to do it in such a way where, let's say in a typical wedding cake where you have 50, 60, 100 guests, you're going to have probably 3 or 4 sheets of cake, as they say. And they cut them into little squares. So you put 100 milligrams of THC in a cake,
Yes.
and if you are in a hurry to bake that cake, you're not going to get your mix really well where you can spread that THC out. And the cannabis chefs that I've spoken to and met, and bakers in particular, they know how to get it so that each piece gets a nice lift for people who are consuming the cake.
And an equal lift.
And an equal lift.
Yes.
By and large, yeah.
It's pretty easy. You could do that with the icing, because there's a lot of fat in it, and
Sure.
and so forth, and of course butter in the cake, and so there's lots of ways to do that, so that the oil or distillate, whatever's in it, will spread itself out,
Exactly.
And so if you know that there's 100 milligrams in one sheet, and you have 50 pieces. Well, you do the math, so it's 20.
Right, you're getting a couple of milligrams. And so the way that cannabis weddings are executed, for lack of better terms, is that you're getting a little bit of a lift throughout the 3 or 4 hours that you're there. If you're drinking it, you're going to get the entourage effect, because when you consume, it goes through your liver and it takes a little bit more time for you to get high. So it kind of, the curve of your feeling the effects of it kind of goes like this. Whereas when you smoke, within 5 minutes, you're going up like this, and you're pretty well lit. But it lasts for a period of time, whereas edibles last longer when you've had it. So there's different pieces of education that the bud tenders will provide. Then you have the cannabis chefs who are infusing salad dressing with either hemp or cannabis, depending on what you want to provide to your guests. And it's a nice spacer if they do it with CBD, because CBD will help equalize your high and bring you down. And then you could have cannabis infused prime rib, or a tenderloin, or if you're doing chicken or turkey, you could actually use and replace some of the herbs and spices and include cannabis flower.
Absolutely. I've watched Bon Appetit over and over again.
Exactly.
It was a spectacular show, and
yes,
props go out to those guys, Pinsky and those guys that were putting that together. I've watched them over and over again. So you've actually attended a cannabis themed wedding yourself to see what it's like?
I've been to many weddings where there were cannabis. It was not necessarily themed that way. And so, it was new to me, and I was tickled to see that this has gone on and evolved over the last 7 or 8 years. I have yet to attend a specific cannabis wedding, but I think it's a great method to promote normalization and acceptance of cannabis in this new legal world that we live in.
Are there actually cannabis wedding planners in business right now? And they should be advertising in your magazine for sure.
For the people that I interviewed, I said to them, Irie Weddings is one of them that does cannabis. They plan cannabis weddings for people in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Nevada. And so they are actually, I think, on the cutting edge, because they've already gone to locations. People want to do destination weddings as an alternative. One of the things that I found out when I did my research in reading through the Bride magazine Ultimate Wedding Guide, they did have alternative weddings, but was missing in the alternative side was the cannabis wedding. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this is good. I could take the same elements that were part of that guide and at least thematically use it to tell a story about cannabis weddings, because even in the gift bags, you can have something in there, whether it's CBD or CBD infused lotions that you want to give to people, chapstick, THC infused, whatever candies or whatever else that you want to provide your wedding guests in a little set, they give what do you call those gift bags?
I don't know, a gift bag.
Well, no,
a swag bag.
Swag, thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
I had to think about the Academy Awards. Let's see, what do they call it? So yeah, swag bag.
Swag bag. So that's another thing that in the cannabis wedding world that they recommend giving your guests swag bags that could have little accoutrements that you might have used in the wedding reception, or other gifts that people might enjoy.
Right. Maybe a lighter with the bride and groom's name printed on it.
Right?
There's all kind,
Exactly.
and obviously, and the people throwing the wedding could obviously get some brands to donate,
Absolutely.
and save them some money. I think it's just really wonderful. What other projects do you have going on right now? I heard that you have other things happening.
Yeah, so I also own a small boutique strategic marketing and advertising agency. As I said, I spent 30 years, I have been in my career in advertising for over 30 years now. Had worked on brands from Nike to Wells Fargo to Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, Pizza Hut, Toyota, Pepsi Cola brands like Mountain Dew, brand Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, and stuff like that. So I got to learn a lot about consumers, did ethnographic research studies, wrote strategies for clients, and was able to execute those strategies into creative messages, TV commercials. Every year at Super Bowl, we would get together with my advertising buddies that we all worked in different agencies, and we would go to the beach to somebody's house where we had 7 big screen TVs throughout the house. And we would probably have 200 or 300 people come visit because we were on the boardwalk in Manhattan Beach. And we were there to see where our commercial was placed. So my friends that worked on Honda, they were there. My friends that we worked on the Nike business, we got to see our 3 commercials. My friends that worked on Pepsi got to see it. So it was just a thing about, okay, whose commercial was better, funnier, better placed in, the commercial breaks and everything else. So my shop is just a one-man gang. It's a boutique shop. I take very specialized clients, and I've been working on a cookbook for the last 5 years on gluten and grain-free functional nutrition. A client was recommended to me who wanted to write this book, and I grew up in the restaurant business, so I know a little bit about food. And so we worked on recipe development over 5 years, shot over 200 different recipes with a food photographer who lit the food. That was the longest process besides the recipe development and testing the recipes out to make sure that it was all great, because we replaced wheat flour and any grain that's out there with plants and seeds so that you could get the same dish without all the side effects that gluten causes for people.
Right, and that's a huge problem for people. It's amazing, yeah.
And the hidden sugars as well. So that's the other side of it. When I say functional nutrition, it's about really marrying some of the most nutrient-dense foods that are out there, and you're using those nutrient-dense foods to replace wheat and grains, which have some nutritional value. But unfortunately, since about the end of World War II was when the wheat farmers started to adulterate their wheat so they could get more yield and feed the world. If anybody knows history, they knew that the world was starving after World War II. And so the US came to the rescue and said, we'll grow a ton of wheat. We'll feed the world. Great. How are we going to do that? Let's genetically modify it so that we get a higher yield. And the lab scientists worked on this, but what we didn't know was that it was going to increase the amount of gluten that was naturally in wheat. Gluten basically works as the glue. So when you work, and it adds the bubble to the bread. So when you bake bread and you get those nooks and crannies, those nooks and crannies are bubbles that were made by gluten. And that gives that bread the ability to rise along with yeast so that you have a nice, flavorful bread.
So all of a sudden, there was more gluten in the product that we were all used to eating, and it became toxic.
It became toxic because people started suffering from autoimmune diseases, and they couldn't understand where the inflammation was coming from. And what was happening is that it's kind of like if you become lactose intolerant. I became lactose intolerant in my mid-20s. This is a guy that used to drink a gallon of milk a day. I'd come home from the gym or from even in high school from football practice, and I'd get there was 2 gallons in the fridge, one for everybody and one for me. and I would just chug it.
So,
Now I can't do that. So the same thing happens with gluten. Over time, the enzymes that our body produces just with aging, and some people get this earlier in life and others get it later in life, but that enzyme that processes the gluten runs out. You run out of it. You stop producing it.
so that never changed for you when you got older. Your thing with milk
On the
didn't
gluten
change?
side of it, I can feel it now. I'm now 62 years old, so I can feel it now. But 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I didn't feel it. I can eat a whole pizza by myself and not feel like I got like bloated.
Right. So that's interesting about the milk. I was lactose intolerant too for a while, but then all of a sudden, I lost a bunch of weight, changed, my habits a little bit, and
Sure.
I don't get that problem anymore, which is great. So
Yeah.
so when is the book going to be published? And is cannabis related to this book at all, or is it just
No,
health style?
that's an interesting thing about it is that though I have shared some of the recipes with some cannabis chefs friends that I have in LA, and they would love to do something like this because it makes it even more healthful if you are adding in cannabis because of the medicinal value that cannabis has, right? So, but no, this is completely clean, free, sugar-free, gluten-free eating and cooking and preparing foods.
So, would it make sense to put a line in there somewhere in the book that says, if you want to infuse your food with cannabis to enhance your healthiness, that you can use cannabis butter or oil in replacement for the oil, or do you just
That'll
want to
be
do
the next book.
Okay, you want to do a separate book. Okay.
But we did do a tip of the hat to Alice B. Toklas in our double fudge brownies that we have in there, because our brownies use almond flour and coconut flour as opposed to wheat flour. And I think in our intro to that recipe said that Alice B. Toklas's brownies have nothing on this other than cannabis. But some of those recipes that I liked that would probably work out really, really well for using cannabis is going to be my oven roasted chicken that I contributed to. My salsa ranchera for huevos rancheros. I grew up in the Mexican restaurant industry with my mom and dad.
Was that in Southern California?
It was in Los Angeles, yeah.
What was it called?
In East LA on Whittier Boulevard. It was called El Camino Restaurant.
El Camino. Okay, very cool.
And the last iteration of that was in the city of Whittier on Telegraph Road. And when my dad decided to retire, he sold the restaurant along with the recipes to a nice family.
Are they keeping it going well?
Visited during pandemic. I went out to LA to visit and got together with a cousin of mine and said, let's go eat at El Camino and see if the food is still good.
Cool. Well, okay, that's great. Well, the recipes hold up, the family recipes. Yeah. I used to go to a place on Beverly Boulevard for a million years called El Coyote.
I knew you were going to say that.
Why would you know that?
Because I lived actually up the street from there for a while. My wife and I had our house in the Fairfax district of LA. So we'd go to El Coyote because that's where we could see rock stars and friends that were in the industry.
And me.
And you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Every birthday, every holiday was celebrated there. Their double margaritas were fabulous. Yep. And their food, I loved. They had some stuff there that was amazing. They had like an egg omelet that was puffed up like a football. And I'd never seen that anywhere else. I don't know how they did it, but it was just an amazing food there. So anyway, the restaurant business, of course, is the hardest business in the world to be in.
Sure.
So the fact that you grew up in it, is amazing. I'm sure you saw a lot of interesting things going on there.
Oh, absolutely.
So what else would you like to get to that we haven't?
Well, my concerns that I get to talk about every so often with people, and one of the things that I've been working on, because at some point I am going to go on the speaking circuit with this, is about really the cannabis industry is everybody's trying to sell a commodity. And I think that that's the wrong way of going at it, because there's so many people that are growing in states where it's become medically legal or adult use for recreational. And in the absence of a brand strategy, everybody's just trying to sell their cultivation of what they've been able to produce. And that's, I guess, okay for people that are just in it to go sell and sell and sell because everybody wants to get high. But I don't think that everybody wants to get just high. It's kind of like with the availability of alcohol. You don't want to just go buy alcohol to get drunk. You want to go buy it to enjoy it. It's your lifestyle, right? So I think one of the things that's missing in this journey for normalization and legalization is to be able to impart what the lifestyle benefits are. Similar to cosmetics, when you look at cosmetics ads in magazines or on television, you see a particular lifestyle that they are promoting, whether it's this clean, beautiful girl that is wearing her CoverGirl makeup and she's a fashion model, or she's going out dancing, whatever it is. Those are the kinds of lifestyle elements that can be incorporated in the cannabis industry for brands that are out there trying to position themselves on the shelf space of your local dispensary so that people know this is what this brand represents. So I see that as one part of the equation for them in the industry that I think needs to be fleshed out a little bit more so that people sell that lifestyle.
Well, you have to sell the lifestyle, and you have to stand out in the midst of thousands of other products and brands. So,
exactly.
And people don't, coming into the cannabis industry generally don't have the experience that you have with branding.
Yeah.
So, how can you stand out? What puts you apart from the other products that are very close to the same as yours,
Right.
So that's really important, and I think it would be great, for you to speak on that. I'd certainly go sit in Las Vegas, some big event. I'd certainly go sit in your seminar and your conference and watch. So you've been to some conferences recently since the pandemic, right?
I'm scheduled. I was going to go to G4. That was I didn't get to go to the G4. That was back in April, May. And so they were going to do another installment of G4 coming up in October. But then everybody saw that you have Hall of Flowers, you got the Emerald Cup, and you have so many other things that are happening that it was not a good choice. So I think they moved it off to April of next year.
Right.
But I am scheduled to be at the Women in Cannabis Expo to go visit that, and because I've got a story that's going to be coming out this weekend on the expo. And this really speaks to where I see an area of the cannabis industry that's actually beneficial, because women drive healthy choices. And so there's a lot of women in the space in the cannabis industry who are blazing a trail, pun intended, in the areas that they're in, whether it's in cosmetics, whether it's in cultivation of flower and specific flowers that provide specific benefits for women.
Like Cali Mist?
Yeah, there's brands that are out there for women that a lot of women deal with endometriosis, fibromyalgia, different ailments, cramps, of course, every month. And so depending on the cultivar and the strain that you're using, can actually alleviate some of the symptoms that come with those afflictions, for lack of better terms. And some use it for improving their headspace, whether they are creatives, whether they deal with depression, whether they deal with agoraphobia. I heard the story the other day from a woman who actually said that when she smokes and she stays with one particular flower, when she smokes that, she actually can be around people. And I thought, you know what? That's a great benefit, being able to be around people.
There's a lot of people that have anxiety in public, and and cannabis certainly gives you what I call an attitude adjustment, and can take you from one place to another in a matter of minutes. And certainly, dosing is so important when you're dealing with anxiety and so forth. And and obviously certain strains. I mentioned Cali Mist. That's with a K. That's a strain that I read about like 10 years ago, but I hardly see it around. It was supposed to be like the strain for women and their cramps and so forth. So I hope that's still around.
I'll have to look it up. A lot of brands disappeared
Well, it wasn't a brand.
Um,
That was a cultivar.
oh, it's a cultivar.
Yes, it's
Oh yeah.
actually a strain.
Well, we'll
And
Google it.
yeah, go to seedfinder.eu is the greatest place to look because then you could see what the genetics in Cali Mist were, and then you could like know what you know, like its mom and dad were, and maybe they have some of the same attributes. Obviously that.
Absolutely. Kelly Mist.
With a K,
Yep,
Kali, I believe.
I'm there. It's known to deliver clear-headed, energetic effects that converge on psychedelic at times, despite having an unknown genetic history.
Oh,
Kelly Mist is believed to have originated in the 1990s through crossing two sativa dominant hybrids. This lightweight sativa is a perfect choice for consumers looking to maintain focus and productivity throughout your day.
right. So they don't mention the part for women, but I'm sure the other articles will. So I hope that strain's still around. But obviously there'll be new strains, and of course the work that people are doing now with terpenes,
Right.
combinations of terpenes and the cannabinoids do wonderful things for people.
Yep.
So and I've learned so much every day. I learn something new on Clubhouse. There's such a great sharing of information there.
Yeah. And I think that's important too, because I said this before that one of my missions is keeping the medicinal conversation alive in this adult use world.
Mhm.
And I think people forget that our ancestors medicated with cannabis thousands of years ago, if not hundreds of years ago, or the inverse. And when you lose that part of the conversation, I think that you'll lose the soul of the cannabis plant,
Mhm.
and it'll just become this commercial, kind of like tobacco or alcohol. It'll be this commercial product, commodity that people just go out there and buy, whether you like it or not. Even if you use it as an adult for recreational purposes, you are medicating. You do get the benefit from it, right?
Absolutely. Whether you know it or not, you're getting medicinal benefit from cannabis.
Yeah.
So the future, of course, is looking very bright. I mean, I think we're over the hump now with legalization. And what's your opinion on federalization? How close do you think it's going to be?
Similar to what some other states have experienced when the voters approved legalization. We're going to have some issues when federal gets approved because the taxation, I think, is too onerous. I don't think that the alcohol industry had to pay that high of a tax when prohibition ended. That's one thing. The other thing is that they are not they're not providing for advocates in the space that deal with those that were marginalized with the war on drugs. And so even though there might be federal expungement of federal records, it doesn't go far enough, I think, in supporting those people that were cultivating and were arrested for growing weed.
And especially while right now, as you and I sit here talking, there are people in legal states incarcerated, in legal states for non-violent
Some of
cannabis.
them incarcerated for life.
Yes.
Which
And some,
I think is ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, it's time to do a blanket release, of those heroes that took their lives in jeopardy for people like me that wanted to smoke. I mean, I've been smoking for 53 years. It wasn't always easy to find stuff, but there were people that wanted to take that chance. They took chances for many reasons. One, they probably liked the cannabis, but they're also in that for the money. But those are some of the OGs that brought these great cultivars from Colombia and the Hawaiian that came in from Hawaii and Nicaragua, all that stuff. The Panama Red. They all took these chances, and many of them are still around. And like Robert Platshorn in Florida, he spent like 28 years incarcerated, and now he's out and he's in Florida fishing and having a great life. But he's also going around and talking about cannabis and teaching seniors about. He's got something called the Senior Tour, and he teaches seniors in Florida about it. So I mean, they're still advocates, even though their lives were ruined by it. They still love the plant and they're still using it.
Yeah, there was years ago, George Young was the big guy in cannabis in the South Bay, in the LA area. And he recently passed away, but he had been in jail for cocaine trafficking, tax evasion, everything else that they got him from. His first bust was on cannabis because he had like 800 pounds in his.
Are we talking about Boston George?
Boston George.
Okay,
yeah.
yes. I know. Yes, I know his history in the movie Blow, and
Right.
he was a famous figure and recently passed away within the last few months.
Yeah, but from a historical standpoint, he actually seeded the cannabis industry by bringing in Sinsemilla red hair from Mexico, where the people that were growing in Mexico figured out how to make it seedless, which was basically having it be the female seed and keep the males away from it so that you
Right.
wouldn't have flower that had a bunch of seeds in it.
So do you think that happened before it came down from Northern California? But by the way, the first time I saw seedless pot, it was called pot then, by the way, but it is cannabis now,
Right.
was probably around 71 or 72, and it came in from Hawaii. The first
Oh, really?
seedless pot I ever had came in from Hawaii in these chrome colored metal tins about this big, like they used to put popcorn in and ship them out to
Sure.
places. And
Sure.
they had all these wonderful sensimilla that we'd never seen before.
Right.
And it was wonderful and psychedelic. And I don't know that I've ever had sensimilla from Mexico. I missed out on Georgia stuff, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's what I started smoking on in 1977 when I was 18 years old. I figured I'm going to go and experiment with different things. And when I got to pot, in those days, it was like getting it from the friends that were nearby. And many times, more times than not, it had seeds in it.
Mm-hmm.
Seeds and twigs and leaves and everything else that you had to sit there and clean it, and you would grind your flour with the leaves and just basically hand grind it, and then you would hand roll your joint. And when I read some of the history of it coming in from Mexico, I thought to myself, okay, I've had dirtweed, I've had ragweed, I have skunkweed, but I had not had seedless weed for a long time. And I think probably between 1977 and I'm going to guess about the mid 80s, I must have had seedless weed 4 or 5 times in that 7-year time span.
You should have been hanging with me. I knew where to get all the Gold Colombian and the Panama Red and the Jamaican. Right. That was early 70s. It was a little. You were too young at that time. I was 20. I was 27 in 77 when you were. 18.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But so anyway, we have a few minutes left. Please give out where people can see Aloft magazine. And,
so you can go to aloftmagazine.com. That's ALOF, like in Frank T, magazine.com. You can follow us on Instagram at aloft_magazine. And now you can follow us and listen to us on Clubhouse at Aloft Magazine on Clubhouse. So you look for the club under Aloft Magazine. We'll actually be launching our weekend warm-ups on Thursdays starting September 23rd. It'll be a 90-minute show, and we'll be talking about some of the same subjects that we have on the magazine.
At what time will you be doing that?
4:20 Pacific. That
sounds like a great time that everyone can do the math in the Mountain, Central, and East Coast times for sure. So,
5:20, 6:20, 7:20.
There you go.
And we'll be there for 90 minutes, and we'll have some guests come in that will have probably about 5 to 6 segments in the 90-minute and talk about things that are cannabis related, whether it is cooking, skiing, playing golf.
That's a big thing, by the way. People love to smoke playing golf. Absolutely. Okay.
Did that for a good 30 years in LA.
As long as you remember to keep that left arm straight. Okay. Where did you play in LA? What courses?
The last courses I played in LA were at Griffith Park on the Cleveland course. Then in Rancho Park, which was across
Pacific Palisades, right? Oh, Rancho Park's on Pico Boulevard.
Across from, I would do the 9-hole executive course because I could go there at lunchtime. Right. My office was in Westwood. I'd say, I'll be right back. My golf bag would always be in there, and I can go do 9 holes in 30 minutes.
Right,
It was a short course.
That was the par 3. I used to play that as well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Alex Gomez, thank you so much. Aloft Magazine. I look forward to joining those rooms on Clubhouse, by the way. And my
Great,
suggestion to you is put up there that you're recording the room, and then put these rooms up on your website. For future, because you're going to be talking about a lot of great things. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Alex.
Thank you so much, Larry. Great to be with you.
My pleasure. We'll be right back after this.
This is the Medical Marijuana Radio Show with Larry Live.
I want to thank Alex very much for coming on today. Also want to thank my 2 radio mentors, both with the initials HS. And of course, we'll be back next week with another great interview. And again, don't forget my Late Night with Marijuana show on Clubhouse every Friday and Saturday nights, midnight East Coast, 9 p.m. on the West Coast. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.
It's a medical marijuana. Whoa.